Since Alpine unexpectedly lost Fernando Alonso to Aston Martin for 2023 earlier this week, things have got even worse for the team in the F1 driver market. It announced reserve driver Oscar Piastri as Alonso's replacement the following day, but amazingly, Piastri said this isn't true. Alonso stunned Alpine by telling his current team he would finalise a new contract with them while secretly doing a deal to join Aston Martin. And now Alpine has been shocked again with Piastri's attempt to snub his own promotion amid rumours he is trying to join McLaren, who don't even officially have a seat for next year. Alpine named Piastri as its replacement for Alonso early on Tuesday evening, but the announcement immediately seemed suspect as it contained no comment from Piastri, despite him already being contracted to the team, and was not acknowledged publicly by him either. Alpine claims it has a contractual option on Piastri's future for 2023 and potentially for 2024, and sources have confirmed to us the team sought legal advice before announcing him. Our understanding is Alpine remains certain of its contractual position despite what happened next. Because just under 2 hours after the announcement was published, Piastri broke his silence in a spectacular way, saying this was incorrect and emphatically stating, "I will not be driving for Alpine next year." Piastri has won a hat-trick of junior single-seater championships from 2019 to 21, including Formula 3 and Formula 2 titles as a rookie, and he is very highly rated. He has completed more than 3,500 kilometers of testing in Alpine's F1 cars and was set to do at least 1,500 kilometers more and take part in FP1 sessions as well. Piastri has therefore benefited from what Alpine calls a significant amount of investment, and that is why the team intends to get a return from that, rather than spend all this time and money getting him ready for a rival team. Alpine's position here is that there are contractual obligations on both sides with Piastri, and Alpine has been meeting its side of the deal. That's why it immediately identified him as the #1 preferred candidate to replace Alonso. But team boss Otmar Szafnauer also admitted that Piastri's management were considering their options, whatever that means. That was a confusing comment which was linked to alleged interest in Piastri from McLaren, and it clearly hinted at complications. So how might all of this have been possible? If there was a clear contract in place with Alpine, then it's surprising for it to have progressed to a point where Piastri's management would believe that not only could he consider another team, but it could get a deal in place that takes precedence over any Alpine option. Had Alonso stayed at Alpine, then Williams looked the likeliest place for Piastri to end up on loan. And as Piastri's contract gives Alpine the right to dictate where he drives in 2023, it was thought he had to accept that choice. But even prior to Alonso's shock departure, Piastri's management, which includes ex-F1 driver Mark Webber, is believed to have pursued alternative options for him, with Webber particularly keen to explore the possibility of him joining McLaren in place of Daniel Ricciardo. And McLaren is thought to be open to the idea of Piastri, even though it has stressed publicly that its priority is supporting Ricciardo. We'll come back to McLaren and Ricciardo later, but all you need to know for now is that it's Ricciardo that must decide whether he will leave the team early, by choice or by payoff, or see out his contract. So back to Piastri. It has long been speculated that Alpine needed to find him a drive by a certain date, or else an element of free agency would kick in. So has that date passed already? Was Piastri free to look elsewhere? If he was able to pursue a pre-contract of some kind, would Alpine still have first refusal if it could offer him a race seat, which of course it now can. Now that the Alpine race seat is on the table, Piastri's options have suddenly changed. The question is, who interpreted his original contract correctly? Quite why Alpine felt the need to take these steps instead of just playing this out in full behind closed doors, only the team bosses know. But at the height of the uncertainty post Alonso's news, Alpine appeared to be struggling to make progress with Piastri's management, and the implication was Webber was not returning emails or text messages. Perhaps the way Alpine was left reeling from Alonso's defection and the manner of the secrecy behind it sparked a hurried bid to avoid a repeat. Alpine only learned Alonso had agreed to join Aston Martin from its rival's announcement on Monday morning, and Szafnauer claims Alonso had told him on Sunday evening in Hungary that an Alpine renewal was imminent. Alonso was offered a one-year contract with an option on the team's side for a second year, which Alpine intended to take up as long as Alonso maintained his current performance level. Alpine expected this to be accepted, but it believes Alonso's offer from Aston Martin, thought to be for 2 years plus one, came with a higher salary and a commitment with no caveats. Piastri carved himself out as the future of Alpine, and before he even gets so much as a drive in a free practice session for the team, he's at war with it. And it's pretty absurd for a driver who hasn't even made an FP1 appearance on a race weekend to be forced into issuing a statement rejecting an F1 drive from his employer. Piastri had better have some seriously good guidance to be going this aggressive, as the consequences could be huge. If he loses this fight, will he be forced to be an Alpine driver against his will? Zafnauer has actually been in that situation before. He was at Honda when Jenson Button wanted to leave BAR for Williams but was forced to stay. But for Piastri, what if he's burned all his bridges and there's no drive at McLaren or somewhere else after all? Could he go from having 2 teams chasing him to none? For now though, the situation reflects poorly on Alpine. Not only did it overestimate its position in bargaining with Alonso, but it also left itself exposed to losing the fallback option. It's unlikely Piastri would publicly denounce Alpine confirming him for 2023 if his contractual situation wasn't at the very least ambiguous. Alpine evidently thinks differently, but the extreme step of unilaterally announcing he will be driving for the team shows how aggressive Alpine has been forced to be in an attempt to regain some control of this situation. It's lost its star driver and is having to fight tooth and nail to keep hold of its up-and-comer, who has publicly rejected it with alternative options limited. Things may have been looking up on track for Alpine recently, but regardless of the rights and wrongs of the contractual situation, this is embarrassing for the team. Zafnauer says he has fielded calls on behalf of several interested drivers earlier this week, and he may need to rely on that amount of interest. Not that long ago, we were wondering how Alpine would fit 3 drivers into 2 seats, Alonso, Piastri, and the under contract, thank goodness, Esteban Ocon. Now it doesn't seem so far-fetched to think Alpine could end up losing 2 of those drivers. As these parties have provided us with a front row seat to a colossal contract row, there's another that has been unwillingly dragged out alongside it. It seems that if Piastri's camp gets its way, he will replace Ricciardo at McLaren. Obviously, he and his management team would not go to war with Alpine and spurn a guaranteed 2023 F1 race seat were they not pursuing another one and extremely confident they will get it. That leads to another safe assumption, which is that Piastri's management must have, or think it has, something very firm in place elsewhere. Piastri has clearly been advised it's okay to publicly denounce his current employer. To do so without a safety net would be extremely negligent. But what about McLaren? Assuming that Piastri's faith is not wildly misplaced, then unless he has something completely different lined up, there are 2 most likely scenarios here. The first is Ricciardo has indicated to McLaren he is planning to walk away from F1 or is willing to use his option to end the contract early, and those talks have begun. That would allow McLaren to engage in preliminary talks with Piastri's representatives and perhaps even agree a deal in principle. Or McLaren is working behind Ricciardo's back and lining up Piastri as his successor with the intention of doing what it takes to convince Ricciardo to walk away. Whatever the McLaren strategy, assuming it really is as involved as Piastri's actions make out, its desire to keep that private has been demolished in such a brutally public dispute between Piastri and Alpine. This means McLaren looks like it's now in the middle of 2 separate cases of 2 teams lay claim to 1 driver in 2 different series. It's a more active participant in the other. McLaren announced it had signed IndyCar champion Alex Palou hours after Chip Ganassi Racing claimed it had activated an option in Palou's contract to keep him there for 2023. Sensibly on Piastri, there has been no word from McLaren so far. The Palou situation is probably a good lesson in why. Best not to lay claim to a driver that seems very obviously about to enter a legal dispute with his current employer. It leaves McLaren for now a silent and unwilling participant in an extreme example of silly season shenanigans, but it is a participant nonetheless. Because for all the wild theories we can come up with about where else Piastri could be going, he can have nowhere but Alpine to aim for unless guaranteed a seat at McLaren, and for that to happen, McLaren needs to guarantee Ricciardo's exit. And as we've said all along, ending that relationship early is Ricciardo's choice to make. So for the Piastri-Alpine mess to be resolved, we must turn our attention once more to Ricciardo and McLaren, another silly season topic that just won't disappear.